all the way back to like this. It's
I for sure.
so I literally am thinking of
What's it say?
It kind of looks like sweetie.
She's tiny. Yeah, so I want to get a bigger one.
That's always good.
Take one down and pass it over. Sit over here. Sit over here.
Paul's got the best seat in the house. It's not in front of the camera.
There's a camera.
Do you?
Are you going to the camera?
No, there wasn't a do, but it wasn't sent out. So.
Yeah.
You gave the Zoom last time to Jared, but not to myself.
I didn't tell him that. I figured that out.
I'll beat you up later.
Okay, yeah, you can beat me up. Talk about planning. Talk about how you should plan your life better.
It was my mom's birthday.
I get it. I know. I have a mom. I think she has birthdays. I'm pretty sure she has birthdays.
We only have two, so.
All right, guys. I think we're going to go ahead and get started. Good to see all of you. I appreciate it very much. I know that taking a slice out of Sunday is not always the easiest thing to do. And I appreciate that you make the time to be here. So it's good to see all of you. I want to just dive right in and introduce our guest speaker today. His name is Dr. Eric Kobe. He's a professor of leadership and technology at Georgia College and State University. In addition to being an alumnus of GCSU, he holds a doctorate of education from Valdosta State. His background includes 29 years in the banking, finance, and insurance industries. He was the co-founder and COO of an international marketing company, and he's a certified financial planner. He's the regional vice president of sales for the Fortega, I'm not sure if I'm saying that right exactly, but the Fortega Financial Corporation, and he sits on their board of directors. So please welcome Dr. Eric.
That's great.
All right, I brought some notes. Y'all ready for this? It's an honor to be here. When Kurt asked me to come talk, I was excited about that. I'm excited because y'all are part of an organization that I consider the gold standard in the experience of a restaurant. I asked Kurt many times to come talk to my class at Georgia College, and we talked about a lot of things, and he shared his earlier experiences growing up for what he used to do with his family. And I did the same thing. I grew up in Pennsylvania. Just tell you a little bit about me. So I grew up in Pennsylvania for 10 years. Anyone else from PA up north? You're smart. It's cold up there. Who wants to be in that, right? It's beautiful outside. Grew up in PA for about 10 years. And you say, Eric, how did you end up in Milledgeville? That's a good question. It wasn't because of Central State Hospital. Although there were times I wondered, but we came back here because my mom and dad started a little business from scratch called the Goody Gallery in 1981. It was the Plowboy hamburger place before that, for those of you that may remember, but we started the Goody Gallery. It was our invention, right? And so my mom and dad, we moved everything we had in a little Ford. I guess it's like a land tank. The thing was big green monster. And we moved down here with our stuff in the back with nothing. And they had a successful run probably for 14, 15 years. Stayed here. I live here currently. Kurt and I are pretty close to each other. Can I call you Kurt?
Yeah.
Boss man. So we live pretty close to each other. I live here. I've got 3 daughters. I've got a 19-year-old who's talking about marriage. I should leave right now. It makes me nervous. I've got an 18-year-old. And I've got a 6-year-old, all girls. Went to school at Georgia College. How many students we got? Anybody's? Have I taught any of you before? So I'm on my 8th year teaching part-time at Georgia College, and I teach a leadership class, graduate class for information systems. I also teach a critical thinking class. How many of you freshmen have had a critical thinking class? A GC1Y? Yeah. It's required at Georgia College, a GC1Y and a 2Y class. They feel like we're losing our critical thinking skills, and I tend to agree. Why? We've got devices buried in our face. There's already studies out there with 30-year-olds having signs of dementia, anxiety, and all these things. Well, It's this thing right here, right? Making me nervous. So I teach those classes at Georgia College. Thank you for the introduction. I also work for Fortegra Insurance Company. I've been with them 23 years. That's a credit insurance company. And I also, 11 years ago, I always wanted to own my own business. I always felt like I wanted to be more in charge of my future. And I hope we all probably, like that particular model where we really want to, own our own franchise one day or do things. So I did this with my best friend. 11 years ago, we started. We're domiciled in Augusta, Georgia. We also have an office in Taguig City in the Philippines. We've got 8 programmers over there. We're on the 20th floor. We've been doing 11 years. We do electronic documents. If you've ever heard of DocuSign and HelloSign, they're a competitor of ours. Well, but our vertical is not in that space. It's pretty much in the finance business and in the real estate business. And we also do text messaging and email. Currently, we're sending out text messages in about 8 countries. So my partner does that full time, but I get in there about once a week as a COO of that. So anyway, that's just a little bit about who I am. Okay. Again, I hope I don't listen. The studies show. Now you've heard most of this before, no doubt. But studies will show that if you hear it about 7 to 10 times, you'll start to remember. So maybe this is your 7th time, maybe your 10th, but maybe it'll begin to absorb a little bit. So we're just going to talk about leadership. That's why I'm here today. As leaders, right? This is your 2nd week of class. Is that what we're talking about? So as leaders, a lot of times even though we want to be in leadership roles, we tend to prejudge. So let me give you a funny story. You may have heard it, so just laugh again, okay? This older couple comes into maybe Chick-fil-A, cute couple, and you see them pull up over here. They go get a chicken sandwich, and they get some fries and a milkshake. And they sit over here together, and the older gentleman cuts the sandwich in half, gives half of it to his wife. He keeps half of it, divvies up the fries, does the same thing. But they begin to share the milkshake. Another gentleman observes and he said, "That's weird. I've had a pretty good week. I'm going to go up and talk to them. I'm going to buy him another sandwich." He walks up and he says, "Sir, can I buy y'all another sandwich?" They say, "No, we're good. We're fine. We do this all the time." He keeps watching them. And the man sits there and eats the whole sandwich, all of his fries, right? His half of that anyway. And her half is still sitting there, but they're sharing the shake. And he goes over and says, "Ma'am, please, what can I help you with?" And she looks up and says, "I'm waiting on my teeth." So you can laugh about that. They shared everything. So sometimes we prejudge, right? Until we know. That's a paradox. That's a funny paradox. It kind of reminds me of another story I'm going to share, and then I'll get into the nuts and bolts of this. And it's about a dad who came up to me, true story, talking about character. This is about character leadership. And by the way, you'll hear me say several times, character leadership, when I was studying at Valdosta State, character leadership really, unfortunately, kind of took a back seat. We talked about leadership strategies and we analyzed all these great leaders over time, but we never really talked about character much. And I think it's because we're living in a culture right now where we're canceling culture, right? It's politically incorrect to talk about the things that we know that makes organizations successful, like you being closed Sunday because it means something of faith. We're afraid to talk about these things. And so it follows in college and academia, they don't talk about character as much. So I had to go brush up on some of my skills talking about character. But this dad came up and said, "Eric, I went to see my son at college." And I go up to the fraternity house and I knock on the door, and let's just say his name's Jack. He said, he knocks on the door. Someone comes over, this ring doorbell, and he says, "Is Jack there?" The guy says, "He's not here, but if you have him with you, leave him on the steps. We'll drag him in later." That kind of thing. And his dad said, "That's probably not the character we want my son, building right now, coming up to this kind of thing. Don't ever make a surprise entrance on your son in college. You never know what you're going to get." So anyway, character has a lot of different meanings to a lot of different people. That's not the character we're going to talk about today. So I think it's kind of appropriate to talk about leaders. Are they born or made? What came first, chicken or the egg? That's appropriate here. Don't answer that yet about leaders are born or made. I put that on my discussion every single freshman class, and I love the responses I get. Are leaders born or made? You have an idea in your mind right now, probably, right? The lens that I'm going to look through today and drill down into, kind of unpack for us, is going to be the lens from the business perspective, because I think that's helpful. but it also applies in verticals in your spiritual life, your personal life, all sorts of different verticals in your life, not just business. So I'll begin with a CEO by the name of Jack Welch. Anyone ever heard of Jack? General Electric Jack, right? GE Jack. Jack came in at 43 years of age in 1981 in a very dying company, General Electric, 43 years old. He came in and he began to consolidate the companies. GE got a little big for their britches. How you like that term, britches? That's pretty formal, isn't it? Britches. He got a little, GE got a little bit big for what ailed them, and they began to buy companies up, which companies do, right? If you look at Google, they've probably purchased 300 companies in the last, I don't know, 6 years. They do that. They do that for a lot of reasons, but GE really got bad with it. But they began to spread themselves so thin and get out of what they really knew well. He came in and brought them down to 72 companies in his reign from 81 to 2001. And they asked him, they said, what makes a good manager in your opinion, Jack? And this is what he said. And listen to this, okay? I prefer the term business leader. Good business leaders create a vision, okay? You have one of the greatest in your model here. Articulate the vision, even better. Passionately own the vision and relentlessly drive it to its completion. See, if you have all the others, but you're afraid to drive it on home, it's all for naught, really. Above all else, though, good leaders are open. They go up, down, and around the organization to reach people. They don't get stuck in the established channels. They're informal. They're straight with people. They make a religion out of being accessible. They never get bored telling the story. The first day at the work job with Jack, he went and he met with janitors. Here's a guy that just signed a multi-million-dollar deal. And he didn't want to meet with the board, the chairman of the board. As we talked about my bio, I serve on the board of our company. We're constantly having board meetings and stuff. And you can get caught up in the minutia of that. Jack didn't. And he met with the janitor. The person cleaning the toilet was the most important person to him on day one. Why is that? What do you think we're doing here? What did Jack do? He wanted to know every single moving part of the organization, starting from the bottom up. And he had an open door policy. So the janitor later on down the line felt comfortable going all the way up to a high rise in New York City to talk to Jack. I think that speaks volumes to where we really need to be. So I think Jack is a great example of this. See, that's page 1. Whew. Getting there. So in assessing leaders in any organization, we really ask 3 questions. And this is every organization. But today we'll talk about the third. Do they have the competency to be the leader? What does that mean? Do they have the knowledge base to do what it takes to run this business? Can they, and have you trained them to properly handle the fryers, do the things out front, change out the carbonation in the drinks, whatever it is? That's the competency piece. And that's natural, right? We all have to be competent at what we do. Do they have the commitment to be a leader? That's number 2. The commitment gets a little more dicey. Are they prepared to work? Are they prepared to work? Are you prepared to come into work and do what it takes to make this place up to do well? And the answer is yes, you're very successful. But do they have the character? That's where we are today, right? Character to be a leader. Strive to be a better one. So in that, we're going to talk about value system. Have you talked about values yet? A little bit. The value system, traits and virtues. Values, traits, and virtues. Should I ask some questions out here? I'm going to start picking on some values. I'm kidding. When I do that in my freshman class, they immediately start looking around, make that eye contact. They don't like that. I won't do that to you. So, as I mentioned, character is the least researched. It's just sad, but it's true. The least researched, least published and discussed of those 3 questions I just asked. And the reason for that is what I mentioned earlier, and I will hit on that again. So I don't want to get ahead of myself. But I think the essence of what character is this, and it's captured in a sermon in 1876. And the sermon was by Charles Haddon Spurgeon. He was a leading preacher of the time. And he's in the pulpit, and he's delivering this message home, and this is what he says. And I think this will pretty much sum it up. I think you may judge of a man's character by the persons whose affection he seeks. If you find a man seeking only the affection of those who are great, depend upon it is he who is ambitious and self-seeking. But when you observe that a man seeks the affection of those that can do nothing for him, but for whom he must do everything, you know that he is not seeking himself, but that pure benevolence sways his heart. In other words, this, you can easily judge the character of a man by how he treats those who can do nothing for him, right? It's easy for us today to come out and say, can I get you a refill? And you say, please, and you bring it back and they say, thank you. And you say, it's my pleasure. But do they go with you when you go home? I hope so. I hope you treat everyone the same way. It's easy when you're on a job and you're on the clock and you're being watched, right? But when you leave, that's when your character begins to pick up when you're by yourself and you're with those who do nothing for you. I hope I'm making a little sense, just a little bit. So back to my question. What and why is character often the least discussed? Maybe our business organizations, I said, are competency focused. I know we are. We do training after training after training after training, and this kind of gets put behind. It gets shoved under the rug. Political reasons, but I don't think it's the case here in this model. Because again, I said you're the gold standard and you're having classes on Sunday. That speaks volumes. Your competition, and I'll use the term loosely because I don't think they're very competitive with your model. What are they doing today? Well, number one, they're open, right? And they're not doing this. And it speaks volumes to why you're successful. Why your organization and Mr. Caffey and his family are successful is no surprise. It's no surprise at all. I can give you an example where we began to lose character in the business world. And most of you are young enough, probably too young to know that we had a financial crisis in 2008. Do you remember that, Kurt? Yeah. There was a bad one. It's where the stock market tanked. We had a very serious problem in this country, and it was driven by greed and a lack of character. We began to put people in houses they couldn't afford. We began to falsify their incomes, and we were driving this thing through greed. And it was a lack of character that took the country down in 2008. That's a great example of where we don't want to go again. So I would say leadership as a whole is basically defined in the three-legged stools. Anyone sat on a three-legged stool? So I have one at the house. Anyone sat on one? Well, without three legs working all at one time, you're going to fall, right? That's exactly what happens. So has anyone ever read the book, Why Leaders Eat Last? Great book by Simon Sinek. You ever read it? Okay, I'm going to tell you about it. Then I'm going to give you the Cliff Note version. Okay. So Simon wrote this book. He's an authority on leadership. And he began telling a story. It was in 2002 when we were in Afghanistan. Keep in mind, and again, we've been fighting a war in Afghanistan for a long time. The Russians couldn't beat the Afghanistans. Why we thought we could, I have no idea. If the Russians that could come down and land and not even have to get there with plane or boat had trouble with them, we had our hands full. And our troops, we had some special forces over there in the valley. Has anyone served in the service in here? We had 22 special ops in the valley over there. And we'll call this guy, his call sign was Johnny Bravo. And Johnny Bravo was up above the clouds and he was flying in the clouds. And our boys were in trouble down. This is 2002. We were using old Russian maps. This is 2002. That's 20 years ago. Is that right? My math right? Old Russian maps, antiquated technology compared to today. And our boys were under fire. And they called above the clouds where it was beautiful up above, but down below, we were struggling. And Johnny Bravo comes down and he's running out of fuel. So he had to count. He was pacing his flight pattern. He's going 1001, 1002, 1003. And then he would take it back up and he would fire. These tracer fires right on him. Long story short, because of his bravery and a couple other of his wingmen, we were able to get those 22 guys out of there. And they asked Johnny Bravo, what was going through your mind? How do you train for that? What's the secret to your success? And he said, we're trained to do that. That's what we do. And he didn't even think anything about it, just about for the fellow man. And I mention that because this is where I think y'all are successful and a lot of businesses aren't. And this is this. In the military, if you think about it, they give medals to people who are willing to sacrifice themselves so that others may gain. Fair? But in business, often we give bonuses to people who are willing to sacrifice others so that we may gain. Now think about that. That's a paradox. Let me say it again. In the military, they give medals to people who are willing to sacrifice themselves so that others may gain. In business, though, we give bonuses to people who are willing to sacrifice others so that we may gain. That's a problem today. That's a big problem. When you have that as your battle cry, that's a problem. And that's why a lot of businesses fail. It's set up to fail. The final analysis of Simon's book basically says this: the cost of leadership is self-interest. If you're not willing to give up your perks when it matters, then you probably shouldn't get promoted. You might be an authority, but you will not be a leader. Leadership comes at a cost. You don't get to do less work when you get more senior. You have to do more work, and the more work you have is to do to put yourself at risk after others. This is the anthropological definition of what leadership is. Excuse me. So pretty important word from someone that has been around a long time. So let's define character. Now we're going to get into some of this, which I'm not. Let's define character. What does Webster define something? I like to always go to old Webster. You know, they're putting new words in there every year from all you Generation X's and Y's and all this new stuff. But this is an old word, and it's defined like this: it's the aggregate of features and traits that form the individual nature of a person or a thing. And one such feature or trait, a characteristic, it's moral or ethical quality. It's a bit nebulous. Maybe that's one reason we don't talk about it as much. We have a hard time pinpointing and defining it. And when we see it, we think we see it. Sometimes we know we see it. And then sometimes we see and there's a lack of it. And I think that's one reason. So today I want to talk about traits, values, and virtues. Let's talk about traits. It's the habitual patterns of thought, behavior, and emotion considered to be relatively stable in individuals across situations, right? We know that. Values, we all have a value system, right? We all have a value system. The founders of your company certainly have had a value system. Do you know probably monetarily what it means for them to be closed today, company-wide? Astronomical. Generational wealth, probably. It doesn't matter. It's not even tempting. It's because of the strong value system. That's the beliefs that people have about what is important and worthwhile to them. And we all have that. Virtues, like behavioral traits, something that is exhibited fairly consistent. And Aristotle wrote this. I love studying up on Aristotle. We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act, but it's a habit. Excellence is a habit. I love that. I propose that cross-enterprise leader. So what is a cross-enterprise leader? Anybody want to take a swag at that? Well, a stab at that. I want to say swag here. I'm getting my drink. That's not very nice. Anyone want to take a stab at that? Not really. You don't want to talk. I'm talking, right? I understand.
Cross-enterprise is that from one industry to the next.
Yeah, and some of its parts and all the whole, trying to make organizations successful. That's exactly right. They focus on long-term performance of an organization, and they demonstrate 10 virtues. And here are the virtues. You've heard them before. Hopefully this is your 7th time, and it's going to sink in. You ready? Number 1, humility. Heard of that? Humility. Do we all need a little humility? My wife says I need a lot of humility. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. It's essential to learning and becoming a better leader, right? Integrity. I'm going to talk about Mr. Buffett here in a minute. Anyone ever heard of Warren Buffett? Warren Buffett was a mastermind of observing people's habits. He went out one day, and this was out west, and he saw people loving this place called Dairy Queen. Well, what did he do? He went in Monday morning and bought Dairy Queen. Now, I can't do that. And most of y'all probably can't do that either, but he observed the habits of people, right? And he talks about integrity in their business model. I think he's pretty successful. Collaboration enables teamwork. If you watch the stock market, what have we done in COVID? What companies have really elevated their stock, their net worth in COVID? A lot of your collaborative software, Zoom, right? Cisco's WebEx. These are software programs that have really engaged people without having to go and work, and they're probably going to stay around a while. My guess is collaboration is really where it's at. In my research that I did at Valdosta State for my dissertation, I collaborated with teachers all over the United States. I wanted access to their students, and together we collaborated. It's an important piece in this world. We don't need to walk this thing alone. We don't need to reinvent the wheel too many times. We can share the journey with other people that's been there, and we can learn from that journey. Courage, justice, temperance, accountability. Oh, I love accountability. Today, we're so easy to blame someone else for something that we did. We just don't want to hold ourselves accountable anymore. It's a problem. I see it with young people all the time. Humanity. Why humanity? Anyone ever heard of empathy? It's a beautiful word. We need to develop a more empathy for our fellow ones. What does that mean? I love the old saying, I cried when I didn't have any shoes until I met a man that didn't have any feet. Empathy. It's hard to put yourself in the place of someone else. But if you can work on that and understand that their walk's been different than your walk. It's helpful. And transcendence, right? And judgment. Enough of that. But those are the 10 pretty important pieces to this thing we're called character. But I think probably where we can really see the effects of this sometime is when we don't see these. And an example would be this: without judgment, you can see leaders make flawed decisions. What does that mean? Especially when they act quickly in ambiguous situations. I'm guilty of that. You've probably been guilty. You guys are slinging so much food around here. I say that respectfully. You've got people lined up and you're on the line for a new experience for someone every day. Anyone watch The Last Dance with Michael Jordan? Love some Jordan. I'm 23, all about some 20. No one seen it? Anyone seen it? He said he went to the, well, I was going to say ballpark. He went to, what would you call it? The court, the auditorium, wherever it was, every single day to play, knowing that someone was there for the first time and he had to make that impression. Wow. And he did it his whole career. And he elevated to be the greatest in my book. We can argue about that afterwards. But wow. And you're kind of on the same, you're trying to create an experience for people coming in here. There's someone, I don't know who, has not had Chick-fil-A, a little different. You guys are doing a great job, but you never know, right? You never know. Without humanity, leaders aren't able to relate to others. And that's what I said a little bit ago. If you can't relate to others, you have a hard time really understanding where they're from and kind of connecting. So I said psychologists, sociologists, organizational theorists study behavior in organizations, and they're interested in these traits, values, and virtues. How does character develop? Think we all could work on this a little bit? I know I can. And it's tough. I think that's some place that we all can find common ground today, where we all realize we could do a little better. That's why we're here. I need to come here every Sunday. I'm not golfing or something. I'm kidding with you. I'm just kidding. Thank you. I would love it. I love this. I think this is fantastic. And I'm going to speak to that in a minute. Back to my question. Leaders born or made? Well, any thoughts? Born or made? I'm going to say made. Yeah, well, go ahead. I'm sorry. I am so sorry.
You're good.
What do you think?
So
I love this.
I think that leadership can be developed, but it can't be created.
Okay.
I'm in a public administration class and we're studying organizational theory
Mhm.
versus organizational behavior. And there's a quote from my textbook that I keep holding on to, which is, "The science of management is attempting to capture the art of management."
Okay.
Which is the sense of philosophers have been trying for years to make a logical formula for an innate trait.
Yeah.
So I would say that leadership can be developed, but it cannot be created.
Okay. So you can develop on it. You can be somewhat of a blend. How about character? Character born or made? We all have character, don't we? Whether it's good or bad. Just saying. What do you think about character? You think we can improve on it?
I think if a person is willing to develop their,
Mhm. Mhm.
I pray if a person is like really willing to actually listen to other people and take like even my little nitpicking and different type of stuff, then a person can develop their.
Yeah. You've met people in your life, and obviously, because you're speaking from experience, I think. And that is, you've talked to people, their minds are like concrete. It's all mixed up and permanently set. You can't change their mind for nothing. Yes, sir.
Well, I think it depends on how you want to approach it.
Uh-huh.
You can change your mind.
Yeah.
Or you can give some thought to it.
Yes, sir.
I come in contact with a lot of customers and
Yes,
I
you
would
do.
ask about how they're doing or how their day is going.
Mm-hmm.
And we strike up a conversation and start communicating. So they tell me they're feeling bad or it's raining today. Well, then I would probably say, well, even though it's raining, but you're here, you can still have a great day.
That's it.
So it's just depending on how you relate to them to give them something to think about.
See, that's the experience I was talking about. And Kurt and I talked about it. This is more than just a restaurant. It's more than just food. It's an experience. And you have a direct opportunity with somebody to change the course of their day. And I think that's critical. I think that character is something that we all have, good or bad. And I think that we can develop it even better. So it's comes on us though at an early age. Studies will show, we're kind of like a piece of clay, when we're a child. We watch certain TV shows. Right now, my daughter is into something called Jessie or so. Jessie, I've got the little ditty in my mind. I can't get it out. I have to go on to something else. I can't. Ugh. But she's watching this show, right? It's Disney or something. I don't know what it is. We're part of this as we grow up. And she's almost like a sponge at 6. You know, she's almost like osmosis. She's beginning to, and that's why it's important for me to be on top of what she's watching or on her phones and stuff. But for the most part, people do not learn values and virtues pretty much by osmosis. They got to work at those and be addressed explicitly in an organization through coaching and active recruitment and learning and education and seminars and things of this nature. The interesting thing about habits is that we're often unaware of our habits. And there's a famous saying that illustrates this point, and you've heard it before, I'm sure, but watch your thoughts before they become words. Watch your words become actions. Watch your actions for they become habits. Watch your habits for they become character. Watch your character for it becomes your destiny. It's pretty powerful. Author on that. Wish I could take credit for that, but I can't. But I think that's really beautifully done. Let's start to sum up a little bit here, okay? So when it comes to leadership, this is important. Competencies determine what a person can do. Can you fry? Can you sweep? Can you take orders? That's what you can do. Commitment determines what they want to do, and character determines what they will do. Wow, that's strong too, isn't it? Your actions speak so loud, I can't hear a word you're saying. I played baseball at Georgia College. That's why I stayed at Georgia College. Got a scholarship to play baseball. Paid my way. And I'll never forget, I was a freshman. I was pitching on the mound. Coach Kurtz was my coach. He was a toughie. He was tough. I'm getting shelled. You know what that means in baseball? It's not a good thing. I was giving up run after run against Mercer. And they had this guy, his name was Mo somebody, big left-handed kid. Gets up, bases loaded, and you can finish the story. He hit a grand slam off. Like, man, I was so dejected, looking down, and Kurtz called timeout, comes out the mound, and I started right away because I like to talk. And I said, Coach, I wanted to do, he said, stop. Your actions speak so loud, I can't hear a word you're saying. And it hit me like a ton of bricks. I could sit there and tell him anything I wanted to, I thought that he wanted to hear. Didn't matter because my actions told the whole story. And that's kind of where we are with this. You probably don't remember Will Rogers. He was a great comedian during the Depression of this country. And for all of you, I didn't live in you probably think I'm old, but I'm not that old. The Depression. Depression was bad news for this country. We had soup kitchens, soup lines. People jumped out of buildings when their stocks went to nothing. It was a very tough time for this country. And how did we kind of bring people across the aisle and to talk, and which I wish we could do more of today. I get so sick of the things that I listen to that we can't get along as Americans. Will Rogers said this about the Great Depression and all, but he told people, he said, live in such a way that you wouldn't be ashamed to sell your parrot to the town gossip. Wow. Live in such a way that you wouldn't want to sell your parrot to the town gossip. This is what I preach to my students every single day. Y'all are about some TikToking, Snapchatting, bebopping. I don't know what all y'all are on, right? I know my daughters are on it. But I tell you this, you're developing a digital footprint. Be careful. There's a lot of responsibility with that. Would you agree with that? Last week, one of my graduate students, he's out of Florida. He calls me up. He said, Dr. Kobe, I've got a really big interview and I need your help. I said, absolutely. What can I do? He said, well, they're giving me these case studies and I want you to help me read them and we'll kind of do a little summary and all. But they're also going back and they're looking at all of my social media and I got some problems. Well, it's out there. You know that delete button's only a delete word, right? You think you think it's gone forever? No, it's there forever. You need to be very responsible. He passed his social media test. Do y'all ever do social media checks?
Well,
Informally. Don't fool yourself, folks. If you're here, you're starting, be responsible with your actions. That's character, right? If you don't want that thing that you're putting out there to be read on the front page of the Atlanta Journal and Constitution, and you have to sit and read it to your parents or someone you care about, then it doesn't need to go out there. He passed his social media test barely. He had a few things that were really iffy. And they let him get him, and they got him to the next round. I just say that because it's the real world. So the question is not really why character matters, but why it does not get the attention and the respect that it warrants, like you're giving it today. For character to find the spotlight, it needs to be illuminated. And that's what you're doing. We're talking about character, and that's why you're successful. It's not something that you have or you don't have. All of us have character, but the key is the depth of development, each facet of character that enables us to lead in a holistic way. It's not a light switch. It can be turned on and off. Character's not that way. The point is that it is a journey. And for most of all of you, everyone's young here, probably younger than me. I'm 50. It's old, isn't it? 50. But it's a journey, and we need to be able to appreciate what it takes to develop habits around character. It's a habit forming thing. So I've discussed what is character, but I think in closing, I want to talk about how. So when I finished my dissertation, I walk out of the room, I come back in the room, and they say to me these two words: so what? Ooh. I just finished up 2.5 years of research. And these people said, so what? How did you add to the common body of knowledge? What's the so what to your research? Pretty powerful question. Smack me in the face. Well, this is the so what of today. Okay. I want to tell you a little bit about how to build more character. And many of you have heard this. Okay. I wanted to tell you, though, before I do that, the example I was talking about, Warren Buffett. He said they look for 3 things when they hire people, period. And here's what they are, right? Intelligence, and that's competency. Can you do the job? Initiative or energy. Be energetic. I know all of you are energetic, but you can have more energy. You can have more energy. And then they look for integrity, character. If they don't have the latter, the first 2 will kill you, because if you're going to get someone without integrity, you want them to be lazy and dumb. He's speaking to character. So here's how they do it. Number 1, how do we do it? Communicate openly. Have an open channel of communication. Jack Welch did it. He received the largest severance package in the history of corporate America on the day he retired. $417 million. Wrote him a check. Boom, just like that. If he can go down to the bottom and talk to, and I say bottom respect, if he can go down and talk to the janitor, we probably can too. Open lines of communication. And I know you have that. You and I talk about that. A person of integrity keeps lines of communication open with everyone in the organization. Everyone. That's critical. Now, you sometimes think, I don't have time. I'm busy. There's 5,000 people out there. The police are coming, direct traffic, right? And I understand the pressure's on. You know, you're on stage, pressure's on. Either you get to work earlier to talk with someone, or you stay later. You do what it takes to keep the lines of communication open, period. You'll never regret that. People like to talk, and people need people to listen. That's the main. You've talked to people before. If I'm talking to you, I know if you're listening, and I'm watching you. A lot of times we're not good listeners, are we? We're really not. You'll look through people and you know they're trying to think of the next thing they're going to say, and they're not listening. We need to work on our listening skills a little bit better. And we need to be more interested in people than we are interested to people. Remember that. All right. Secondly, practice what you preach. Ooh, this is from Buffett. Now, this is not old EK from out there in Millie. This is Buffett. He's a billionaire. I think he's done okay. Practice what you preach. Leaders walking the talk of integrity, deliver on doing the right things, and set good examples, not just here. Now, what would you think? I mean, if you have some of your leadership in here, you see them go out and there's a traffic situation out there, and there's a problem out there, and you see your leaders flip the bird, something wow. What's that say? Right? Carry this all everywhere you go. Stay positive during tough situations. Oh, that's a hard one. We've had some tough situations in this country recently, and we've had some in the past, and we're having more to come. Stay positive in those times. Don't wear a mask. This is what do I mean by that? Being true to yourself is far less stressful than being someone you're not. Be who you are. God gave you the abilities. Be who you are, and never be ashamed of who you are. Ever, ever. Be assertive. Accept the fact that conflict is unavoidable. Good night. Unavoidable when human beings are involved. Y'all, how many people are working in the Chick-fil-A? 100 now?
We got 124, 125.
It's probably close to that.
That's amazing to me. And when I tell my friends that about my good friend Kurt and how proud I am of him, they just are floored by the volume in the people, right? When you deal with people, you're going to have conflict. We all come from different walks of life. Every day, the first day of class, I go, and anyone ever been a part of the birthday paradox? If I had time, I'd do it here today. But the birthday paradox is a mathematical equation. And if you get a room of at least 23 people, there's a 50% chance that you share the same birthday. Now think about that. 23 people, there's a 50% chance though that you share the same birthday. And why is that such a problem for us? Is because we think in a linear fashion. We don't think about the multiple relationships out here. That's the same thing I'm talking about with human beings. With 100+ people, you come from all different walks of life. You have many different habits and different concerns and all, and it's difficult. It's difficult, but you have to be assertive, and display emotional honesty. Leaders with integrity don't say things to sugarcoat. They just to look good in front of others. They don't betray themselves or others by using words or making decisions they're not aligned with who they are at the core of their being. Okay. Jack Welch, again, he was honest. He was brutally honest to some people. It's hard for us. It's hard for us to say no to people. It's the funniest thing. It's just a 2-letter word, but it's hard to say no. But it's best to be who you are. All right. That's a couple. And I'm going to add a few more hows about character. Decide to be self-supported. I see no one in here today that is paralyzed or has some sort of an issue where they need help necessarily, right? Be self-supported. What do I mean? That means no one owes you anything, a living. It's up to you to chart your own course, right? Create a strong self-worth and self-esteem. Seek continuing education. What does that mean? Old Hal Jen, he was a president. I studied old Hal. He was a president of ITT. It was an international telephone and business communication company, multi-billionaire. In the business world, he said, everyone is paid in 2 coins, cash and experience. He said, take experience first and the cash will come later. That teaches patience. A lot of you want different positions or doing different things. Patience, it'll come. I worked with the United States Senator. His name was Sam Nunn. Anyone ever heard of Sam Nunn? I know Kurt has from Perry. And I worked with Sam, Senator Nunn. He was the chairman of the Armed Services Committee. He had the nuclear codes. He had the football. Anyone ever heard of the nuclear football? It's when the president of the United States, interesting thing, I digress, but I could tell you the day at 12 o'clock when Trump went out, Biden went in, the code in Air Force One switched over and they call it the biscuit. It's hilarious, but it's the political biscuit and that holds the codes to the football. They switched over automatically on Air Force One on his way to Florida and it went to Biden. Well, Sam Nunn had those codes and only 5 people have those codes. Sam Nunn had them and I loved working for him, but I got a chance only to meet him once. And I get in there and I'm nervous and I'm asking, the other folks are asking questions. And I said, Senator Nunn, if you could tell me one thing, I thought, great question. One thing to be successful like you. And again, I'm 19 years old. What would you tell somebody? And this is what he said, read a lot. I was like, man, I'm expecting some, you know, I said, read a lot. I don't like to read. Read a lot. Okay. And he said, but let me tell you a little bit more about that. Surround yourself with good people. He said, you ever heard of John F. Kennedy? I said, yes, sir. He said, rising tide lifts all boats. What do you mean? He said, well, if you surround yourself with good people, you're going to elevate your stock a little bit, right? But it also goes the other way. Surround yourself with some of this, you're going to get some of this. It really hit me hard. But the most prophetic of that month was read a lot. And that's your education, right? How about this one? Spread kindness. I love it. I love this one. It's free and people love it. You do a great job of it here too. That's why you're successful. I think it's more important than wisdom, really. Being kind, building character. I really do. Work on yourself. Work harder on yourself than you do at your job. If you worked on yourself as hard as you work for these gentlemen up here, you have to do that. You owe it to yourself. Don't get caught in the weeds and give that up. Pursue excellence. Pursue it. My grandfather always told me this, and I was not the best worker around the house when I was growing up. Let's just say that. I do it halfway sometimes. And he said, Eric, if you don't have time to do it right the first time, when are you going to have time to do it again? Yeah, makes sense. Give it your best. Pursue excellence. Add value. Leave every situation just a little bit better than you found it. You've seen people borrow some of your things before and it comes back broken. You know, they borrow my lawnmower and it comes back empty on gas. Don't do that. Leave it better than when you found it. We should leave Earth a little better than we found it, right? That's our call, I think. Look at Chick-fil-A look at, I don't know if y'all have expense, does anyone have expense accounts? Just about. In our company, we have expense accounts. For our sales team, our national sales team, for our document company, they have sales accounts. I go over the sales, or I go over the expense accounts, and I'm looking at it. And sometimes there's some really fishy expenses on there. And I'm encouraging these guys, look at it as if it is your own company. Because when you look at it through that lens, all your decisions will be right. You have ownership in this. Okay. Practice persistence. One of my favorite basketball coaches of all time is Jimmy Valvano. Anyone ever heard of Coach Valvano? Wolfpack, 1983. They beat Houston, Clyde, Slide, Drexler, and they beat, I guess, Hakeem Olajuwon and some of that crowd. And it was an upset of huge proportions. And just 10 years later, he came down with a metastatic back cancer, and he got award at the ESPYs. If you go back and watch the YouTube video, he could barely get up to the lectern. It's not a podium. A podium you stand on. You stand behind a lectern. And he gets up there in his back and he said, I've got days to live. And he gets up there and he says this. He said, never give up. Don't ever give up. And he never did, even to the last day. That's persistence. Determined to be determined. Some people succeed because they're destined to, but not really. Most succeed because they're determined to. Promise less and deliver more. That's number 9 for character. We're all guilty of this. Listen, I'll get up with you next week. I'll holler at you. And guess what you do? You never holler at them. We look for filler in conversation, don't we? I'm bad about this. Kurt, I'll get up with you next week. We'll get together. I never do it. But if you do that enough and people really listen to you, you're wearing away, you're eroding a little bit of your credibility. Promise less and deliver more. Lastly, give credit to others and less to yourself. I love that. It reminds me of one of my favorite motivational speakers, old Zig Ziglar. Anyone ever heard of Zig? From Yazoo City, Mississippi. He said this. He said, we all need to check up from our neck up. We need to eliminate stinking thinking, right? And then he said this was profound to me. He says, if you'll help enough other people in life get what they want, you'll have what you want. I love that. Give credit to others. Take yourself out of the limelight. Your day's coming. Okay. All right. I'm almost finished, folks. I'm sorry. I'm a little wordy. Leadership expert, John Maxwell. I studied Mr. Maxwell. Y'all study Maxwell? Some? Fantastic leadership. He said, talented people are sometimes tempted to take shortcuts. Character prevents that. Talented people may feel superior and expect special privileges. Character helps them know better. Talented people are praised for what others see them build. Character builds what's inside them. Talented people have the potential to be difference makers. Character makes the difference in them. And lastly, he said, talented people are a gift to the world. Character protects that gift. Character is much more important than your talents. That's what I'm here to take. If I could give you a takeaway, I would say character is much more important than your talents. I'm going to leave you with one of my favorite quotes, John Wooden. Anyone ever heard of Coach Wooden? I like to read these books if you can't tell. Oh, Coach Wooden, he said this. He was a great basketball coach at UCLA. Coached some of the greatest. And he said this. He said, talent is God-given. Be humble. You've heard this. Fame is man-given. Be grateful. Conceit is self-given. Be careful. I'm going to leave you with this final little thought. When that day comes and the final analysis is out on your life, your character will be much more important than your career. Your character will be more important than your career. It will be. But it's a funny thing. Usually great careers are often a product of superior character. So they kind of become one and the same. So I went to the cemetery the other day to pay respects to, I was with my daughters. We went to the one across from the Methodist Church on Lock Haven Road, and we went to see their grandparents and all. And as we're walking around the cemetery, I have my 6-year-old with me. And we're walking around and she's taking it in. It's hard, it's a hard place to understand everything. And we're sitting there and you see on the tombstones, you see a hammer, you see a cross, you see different things people had and thought about in their life. But in the middle, you see date of birth and you see date of death, don't you? But what do you see in the middle? You see that dash. And you've heard this before, right? So my challenge to y'all today, what's going to be your dash? What represents your dash? Because in that dash is the story of your life, right? And that's an awesome story. That's an awesome responsibility. And it starts with you. That's all I have to say about character. Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm back. Thank you. Oh, yeah, you're welcome. How long did I talk? Too long? I'm so sorry, y'all.
Y'all watching the clock. Okay.
Thank you for being here. I'll see you next Sunday with round 2.
Please,
Kidding.
please feel free.
Kidding. Thank you. Now you fixing to go?
I'm getting ready to say a few more stuff.
All right, good. Y'all, thank you. I'll be down here tomorrow for a chicken biscuit. I'll be watching y'all, okay? All right. See y'all.
Guys, I enjoyed that. I hope you did. That was a lot of really golden stuff. And that was a lot of really powerful things. And I think that it speaks a lot to what you and I are attempting to do here. We're attempting to grow our character. We're attempting to put an emphasis on character where a lot of the rest of the business world doesn't. And I think that it's important that we do that. So listen, you had a lot of stuff there. So it's probably kind of like drinking from a fire hydrant already. So we're not going to, spend a lot of time on our next character quality, but I don't want to make this a 6-week course. It needs to be 5. So let's just hit on a couple things here, if you don't mind. First of all, work from last week. Who remembers what that was? Justin. Goals. Do you have 3? You want to share them with us?
Graduate, get a full-time job. It's written down.
Good. Okay. I feel you. I'd have to look up on my phone to remember, but I could remember 2. One was to teach this class twice this year. And one was to have a leadership development plan for each one of you, specific to you, individualized. Those are 2 of my corporate goals, my business professional goals. One of my family goals is to go camping with my family this year. I'd like to go twice if we can. Anybody else have some goals that you want to share? You don't have to share all 3. You just want to share 1 or 2. Everybody wants to talk to me.
Get married this year.
Get married this year. Okay. All right. Anybody else get married this year?
No.
All right, not bad. How many of you logged on to Lead Well on the Chick-fil-A home webpage? Gotcha. All right. That's 10% of your grade right after that. 20%. 20% of your grade. No, just teasing. But I do really think that that is a valuable resource. If you want to grow as a leader at Chick-fil-A, the Lead Well resource is very helpful and useful for that. Sorry, we're closed. We used to park. Do you guys still park backwards in the drive-thru when you have meetings here? Anybody, we still do that? Always funny to me. All right, responsibility. Paul, thank you for letting me do this. I forgot to print off a copy for myself of my own notes. Let's define responsibility. Liable to be required to give account as of one's actions or of the discharge of a duty or trust. You must give an accounting of your performance. Well, you have to give an accounting to those over you in authority, but you also have to give an accounting to yourself. You have to be able to look in the mirror and say, I gave my best. I did what I could. You are responsible not only to me or to some other authority in your life. You're responsible to yourself and ultimately responsible to God for how we perform our duty, how we carry out our responsibilities. Do we do it in a responsible way? You could define responsibility as hard work. Being responsible means that you're willing to do hard work. How do I define hard work? Well, it's work that is hard. It's not easy work. Hard work is hard to do. It's not easy to do it. But it's the people that have strong sense of responsibility that are willing to hunker down, suck it up, and do the hard work that is sometimes required of you to do. And so, honestly, it's easy to forget that. It's easy once you begin, as you guys are, developing as leaders. You've been promoted to a position of leadership in a successful restaurant. it's sometimes easy to forget that there's sometimes just plain old hard work that you have to do. And we need to remember that. There's always things that we don't like to do. You will never find a job in which you like absolutely everything. Even if you did, you wouldn't like quitting. Like eventually you have to retire, and then there'd be something that you wouldn't like. That was really funny. You guys were supposed to laugh at that. What's the matter with you? Are you okay? We need to pass around, some adult beverages that make you more interact. Maybe not. Practical application. We know what responsibility is. Let's talk about how is it applied here at Chick-fil-A. You take responsibility for effective communication. Communication is a two-way street, guys. It's not just about me, what I'm saying, being clear. It's about the person receiving being clear. It's both directions. Communication happens on both sides of the chute. Okay? So if I'm trying to communicate, I have to take responsibility to make sure that I've communicated effectively to Rhea that I need this chicken sandwich, no pickles, not off screen.
Yeah,
Come on, Rhea, what's up? Now Rhea is responsible to indicate that she heard what I said. And I'm responsible to make sure that the message got through. Same thing other way around. If she knows that we're holding on strips, she is responsible to communicate that to the front line. And she needs to make sure that the message got through. She's responsible for making that happen. And I'm responsible for acknowledging that it did get through. Does that make sense? This is where this character trait is a pillar of success as a Chick-fil-A leader. Is because I need to be responsible for effective communication. Sometimes that means over communicating. So, this is one of my things. I say, look, are we clear on this? We know this is happening. And somebody goes, yes, I know. And I'm going, all right, didn't know that. Take a chill, put the sword up. Somebody's laughing extra hard because they experienced that this week with me. I won't say her name, but her initials are Krista. No, that happened this week, but it's not. It happens plenty of other times in my life. Maybe I communicate too much. Maybe I don't know. I'm not sure. But this is the issue. Communication is a two-way street, and we all should be responsible enough to make sure that happens effectively. Okay? Hear me here? What about taking responsibility for errors? Errors happen, and we should avoid blaming other people. We should not point fingers at others unless it's absolutely necessary. We should avoid blaming other people when errors happen. Or if I have made a mistake, I want to point mostly at my part of that failure. Listen, incompetence usually becomes pretty evident. When someone is incompetent, that usually becomes clear very quickly. It's not necessary for us to point neon lights at somebody stinks at their job. That's not usually necessary. It's pretty clear to most everyone over time. So it's better for me to just take responsibility for my own mistakes and avoid blaming other people. How about arriving on time? Being to work on time. I knew a director once upon a time who had amazing work ethic. He was good with the team. He had all kinds of potential. A really interesting guy, but he had a hard time getting to work on time. And it was in large part because of that he was released. He was director level. He was a college graduate, but he couldn't get to work on time. That's part of responsibility, taking responsibility to get to work on time. Having the tasks completed on time. Taking initiative to gain skills, knowledge, and experience. Your success as a leader is up to you. It's not on anyone else's shoulders to make you grow, to make you succeed. You are responsible for that. You need to take responsibility and not say, well, nobody invested in me. No, you are responsible for that. So take that responsibility on your own shoulders and seek out new skills, seek out new experiences, seek out new life and new civilizations to boldly go where no man has gone before. Man, I feel old right now. Man, does anybody get that joke? Thank you, Ray. I love you. And Olivia. Star Trek, right? And Krista knows, because Krista's ancient as me. That's what they said in Star Trek, at the being Star Trek, to seek out new life. Anyway, I don't repeat it. You are responsible for your own growth. Make it happen, folks.
They say it in the new one too.
Yeah, thank you. So apparently, just a handful of us are, science fiction geeks here.
Yeah.
Taking responsibility to develop others. This is what I want to emphasize to you all. As leaders, part of your responsibility is to develop those around you. Part of your job is to invest in the people that you work with, especially if they are under your authority in this business, because you need to be developing others. Tom Davis is a leader that I respect, and a leadership coach. He says, I'm at my best when I've developed the others around me to be at their best. When the others around you are at their best, that's when you are functioning as 100% leader, as the best leader you can be. There's a lot more to leadership, but that is a very important piece. And it's a leader who is responsible, who will take initiative to invest in those around them. Right? Any questions, any thoughts, comments, or other science fiction, obscure science fiction references to make? Okay. So let's work on actively applying responsibility. Here's a couple ways I want you to do that. Work for this week. Okay. Now, I've written down 3 things. I think that it's possible to do all 3 of these. Some of these work assignments, it's going to be like, okay, I'm going to pick 2 or whatever, and that's it. But this one, I think you can do all 3. Number 1, make sure you're not even 1 minute late for every shift. Every shift you have this week, make sure you are not even 1 minute late. And I can look up and find out whether or not you were, just so you know. Try. Just see if you can make it without being even 1 minute late, and see if you can catch me being 1 minute late. Okay, we'll try to catch each other. Jonathan's like, he's actually going to do that, dude. Number 2, do a task normally considered bottom rung, and do it cheerfully. There's always tasks that we give to the brand new people. They're the bottom rung jobs. Hey, it's your turn to clean up the toilet this week, or whatever. Go clean the parking lot. I want you to go fillet chicken. You got to do rotation. Whatever those bottom rung jobs are, you as a leader, at least sometime this week, go do it yourself. Pick that bottom rung job and be willing to do the hard work. You see, you'll gain trust with your team if they see that there's nothing too low for you to do, that you're not too big for your britches. Like that word, britches? Hopefully he never sees me making fun of him in this video. That just seemed like an awkward comment. I mean, he was trying to engage with you guys, and it's just like, anyway. Olivia's losing it. But seriously, it's an appropriate phrase us old guys use. You're too big for your britches. It means that you're too high and mighty to be down there doing the little peons work. We like that word, right? From last week, peons. So pick one this week sometime on one of your shifts and go do that bottom rung job. Go do that thing that nobody else really wants to do. And you say, you know what, I'll go do it. Because you will earn trust with your team if you are willing. Show them that you're willing to work hard. Number 3, pick someone to invest in with whom you work on a regular basis. And when I say invest in, I'm not saying, like, hey, you want to go, I had this whole curriculum worked out for I can be your mentor, and I'd like to teach you. And would you like to become my mentee? You know, and there's like this huge, broad thing where I'm going to make you the greatest leader you ever thought you could be. You don't have to be that much investment. It could be 5 minutes where you stop and you pay attention to them. You say, hey, here's your week. Okay, cool. Or maybe you say, hey, you want to go bowling with me this week? Well, maybe you don't do that, but I mean, I like bowl. Maybe you just a little bit of investment honestly goes a long way. You could say, hey, would you like me to teach you how to do X? Or maybe you'd rather teach them Y, but you can teach them something, right? Pick somebody that you work with. It probably needs to be a subordinate. I'm not sure you could pick Kurt, or somebody that you work with. You can't teach up really as much, but you can invest in those that you work with on a regular basis. I want you guys to do that because that is honestly one of the most fulfilling things about a job is being able to give yourself to someone else, to invest part of your life into someone else and see that grow and develop and mature. It is really worthwhile. And it's very fulfilling to do that. And that's why he was saying, Dr. Kobe said, if we will make others successful, we will be successful. It will help us to grow if we invest in others. So let's take responsibility to do that this week. Responsibility. Also, I got one more fun little thing. You already got it? How many of you know what that means? Big brains. Wow. Okay, if you did not hear what Dustin said, and was it Olivia or Morgan that said it?
We both said it.
Okay, this table, the teacher's pet table, ignore them. How many of you know what this is?
I thought it was do what you say, not what you say at first, and I was like, wait,
Right.
that doesn't work, and then you said it.
Okay, Justin, tell them what it is.
Do what you say you would do.
That's right. Do what you say you would do. Man, I thought that was so clever. I was going to give a $10 bonus to anyone who could tell me what that was. But since it happens so quickly, might give you some more. Might give you some more.
$10 bonus, yeah.
So you should have just waited until I said that, and then you could have got. My brain is too big. Do you remember that Far Side comic? Maybe you guys have never heard it. The kid's sitting in the class, and his head is like shrunk. He's like a shrunken head. Everybody else's head is normal size, and his is tiny. And he raises his hand and says, "Excuse me, my brain's full." Maybe excused. No. Okay. All right. So we got our work. Any questions? Yes, please.
I feel like we have one more thing on the agenda.
Mhm.
It is Rebecca Brown's 18th birthday today,
Wow, I totally agree with you.
and I feel like we owe her a song. And I don't know
I
which
feel
one.
like we do. We absolutely do.
Where were your vote?
Which song is it going to be? Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Rebecca. Happy birthday to you. When I was in college and somebody had a birthday, every time that person sat down, we would sing, happy birthday, happy birthday, happy birthday, happy birthday, hey! Every time they sat down all day long. It was.
Or we could sing that. Or we could sing
All right. You guys are great. I appreciate you. We will meet again next week at 3:30, and we'll talk about humility.
What if you don't have